You're listening to episode number 105 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. Now, this episode is titled Holistically Healing Coronavirus Quickly, meaning should you get it? Now, that was the original title, and I have to segue from that, so keep listening and I'll tell you why, and we'll dig into this week's episode. Keep listening. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so what is this week about? Last week, when I wrote down, hey, here's what we're going to cover next week, at the end of every episode, I say, hey, here's what the next episode is about. Last week, I had titled this episode, Holistically Healing Coronavirus Quickly. And the reason I did that, let me just segue here, is if you've listened for any amount of time, my brother-in-law is a shaman. He's a healer. And healers, well, being shamans, in Native American times, they would have been the medicine men. And, you probably heard me say before that people come from all over the world with major ailments when doctors can't heal them. And he called me about 2 weeks ago. And he said, we talked about many different things, but he said, this is what I want you to do. In the event you should feel any symptoms of coronavirus, this is exactly what I want you to do to knock it out very, very quickly. And he told me exactly what he wanted me to take. Now, what I want to share with you is I wanted to share that with you. And I started thinking about it, and it's all natural stuff, by the way, which I'll talk a little bit about some of it. But the thing is this, I started thinking that, if I share these remedies that he gave me, and they're all things that you could buy at Whole Foods or a natural store, if I share this, and I could be opening myself up for liability. I'm not a doctor. I do not dispense medical advice. And I started thinking that, somebody could misunderstand. They could say, Jim, I had the corona. I didn't go to the doctor. Which, by the way, if you suspect that you've got coronavirus, I urge you to do whatever you think you need to do for you. But maybe the doctor or the ER or the hospital or whatever you think you need for you. However, what I didn't want is people to say, well, you know what? I followed what you said holistically and I got sicker and blah, blah. And, there could be so much liability there. And I started thinking about it and I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to open myself up for that liability. So that being said, I'm not going to share with you what he told me to do in the event I contracted the coronavirus, to knock it out literally very, very quickly. And hopefully you have, I wanted to help, seriously. I want to help all of you. Hopefully you're understanding, though, that we live in a very litigious world. We live in a world where people love to point fingers. And when I started thinking about it, it went against my better judgment to say, hey, I'm going to give you the formula that he gave me. Now, now thinking about all of that today, before I record this episode, I'm like, well, where the heck do I go with this episode? And in every episode, I want there to be great value. I want there to be takeaways. So I do want to go a couple of places without sharing with you the holistic remedies that he told me. And I'll cover some of that in just a moment, but I want to go a couple of different places here. Number one is one of my students in my mastermind told me that she had contracted the coronavirus. And what I want to share with you is she's, I don't know, probably 50 years old. And she said, I'm healing very, very quickly because she does know my brother-in-law and she's working with him and he told her what to do to heal. But she said it really wasn't, I want to be careful with her words here, but basically the gist is she said, I'm not going to kick the bucket. It's like not a big deal. And I'm glad that I had this and I started early with what your brother-in-law showed me because I'm going to be just fine and I can help more people. I do want to point out, and here's the thing also with doing a podcast and as many people that listen, is what I know is this: people will do anything to validate their fear. They will do it's just called cognitive bias. People will do anything to prove that they are right, whether it's having what people call alternative, air quote, alternative facts, or this study or that study or whatever. People will find something to validate what they think is true. And I don't know if you've done, and I haven't done a whole lot of research because I'm not going to put my attention there to any large degree. But you look at the news if you do, and I don't look at a lot of the news, but you look at the news and you see, especially on CNN, and I usually will look at a couple of different news sources. And to me, the irony is you can look at three different news sources. Let's say you're looking at Reuters and Bloomberg and Fox News here in the US and CNN. You will see things on CNN that you will never see on Fox. You'll see things on Fox that you will never see on CNN, which tells me that if you're following one news source only, you're not getting the whole story. You're only getting the slant from that particular news outlet. And there was, you look at CNN if you do, and every day they have plastered on their front page, their homepage, Italy, 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 Italy. And I did a little research and I found a report from the National Institute of Health. And this is probably maybe a week old. But what Italy had discovered is that 99% of their coronavirus patients who died in Italy suffered from some other pre-existing health issue, according to a study done by the country's health officials. And I just have it here in front of me, so I'm just kind of glancing over it. Now, this new research from the National Institute of Health released Tuesday, and I'm pretty sure it was last Tuesday, evaluated 355 of the country's fatalities and found that only 3 patients had no prior medical conditions. Nearly half of the COVID-19 victims suffered from at least one of the following conditions: high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart disease. More than 75% reported high blood pressure, while 35% had diabetes and 33% had heart disease, according to the study. Now, this study was done by the National Institute of Health in Italy, and they discovered that the age of people that were actually not surviving was 79 years old. Now, the reason I started a little earlier and I said that people can find anything they want, I'm just reading this one study. What does give it credibility is from the National Institute of Health in Italy. And like I said, I have not put a whole lot of time into this. But I read a report that was about, well, how come South Korea isn't having as many, they've got a lot of infections, but why are they not having the fatalities that they're having in Italy? Well, it's a much younger population that's contracting, the coronavirus. So let me just share that with you. And the reason that I do, the overlaying frame here that I'm talking about is that, and I've done a lot of, by the way, if you want to email support, email support. If you want to argue, email my support. We tell people all the time at the bottom, or I think at the outro, if you've got a question, support@jimfortin.com. If you want to argue or you want to this or that, by the way, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to argue with you, and I won't see the email anyway because it'll go to the support team. And where I want to go in this episode is a bigger context, a bigger frame about where you even are mentally and emotionally while all of this is happening. I mean, a large percentage of the world is into their fear, and it's a whole different ballpark, and it's a whole different thing to be in fear than it is to be cautious, which I'll get to in just a moment. If you want to look at holistic things, let me just throw some things out there. Take it for what it's worth. I've been on holistic remedies for pretty much my entire life. Anybody that knows me that's been in my coaching will know that I used to say quite literally that I had, until recently, which if you've listened to the podcast, I was in the hospital recently for heart failure. The cardiologist literally through all testing, which I did a lot of testing. By the way, it was like crazy. 3 days in the hospital, the bill was $58,000, which to me is mind blowing. And it makes me think, how can people without health insurance get by in this country? I mean, I was like flabbergasted when I called my insurance company and they're like, yeah, the hospital billed us $58,000. I mean, insanity. But, and I'd mentioned also to get to a little defense here, is I've never had anything wrong with me. I mean, I have not had a prescription literally until recently. Since 1999, I believe. I've not had antibiotics since 1999, and I never even had the flu or the cold for I don't know how many years. I don't even remember until recently. But when it comes to holistic things that make the body stronger, things like D3 infused, because D3 by itself is not entirely good for the body, vitamin D3, but D3 infused with K2, vitamin K2, infused with the body, infused with D3 is very good for you. Oregano oil, oregano tincture, and garlic. And you can get all this in capsule formula. It's all very, very good. It's been medically proven to ward off virus and bacteria. So you may want to do your own research on that. And what I don't want to do, the reason, let me back up. I wanted to share with you guys the exact formula my brother-in-law gave me in the event I should contract, contract and have corona. But again, I don't want to open myself up for liability. But what you may want to do, I suggest strongly, is just Google or Bing or whatever, Yahoo, whatever you use, and start doing some research on natural remedies that you can take in the event you get the cold or flu. And then use your best judgment from there. And again, I wish I could do more. I really do. But I felt that it wasn't in my highest good to put out a particular, here's exactly what you do, and then open myself up to any kind of liability. Now, I also want to look at your mental aspect of where you are when it comes to all of this, because you see so much, and I do my best to avoid Facebook. I have some groups that I have to log on to Facebook to get into my groups, but you see so many people, and candidly, these people literally, I mean, guys, I'm trying to be very kind here, and I want to be very kind. But I've always been baffled, especially in politics, how people who don't know the difference between two, and two, TO and TOO and TWO, how people literally don't know the difference between these three words because you look at their post and they're grammatically incorrect. They don't know the difference between two, and two, yet they're experts in domestic policy and foreign affairs and electoral politics and economic politics and all this kind of stuff. They don't know the difference between two, and two, but yet they're experts in all these, in advanced politics. And I find the same thing true with coronavirus. How is it that these same people, these armchair quarterbacks, are highly not educated, but yet they're educated about coronavirus? And maybe they are, maybe they're not, but I'm going to tell you this, by being a relatively educated person, formerly educated, I have a couple of degrees from a really good school, and working with a shaman for a lot of years, and basically more than anything, which a lot of you guys have, just having common sense and not overreacting to the world, is a lot of what I'm reading on social media is absolute nonsense. As a matter of fact, one of my best friends was over for dinner tonight. You may or may not know him. Many of you probably met me through him. His business is called his podcast is called Mind Your Business Podcast, and he's a very big influencer online. His name is James Wedmore. He's one of my closest friends, and he's over for dinner tonight. And we were having this talk about the swine flu. And back in 2009, when the swine flu was at pandemic proportions, 65 million Americans contracted the swine flu. And what we were talking about is how swine flu was a pandemic, but how the world wasn't going crazy about the swine flu. And James brought up an interesting point. He said in 2009, I don't know if the numbers are accurate, I'm sure they're probably pretty accurate, but he said in 2009, Facebook only had 170 million users on it. Now in 2000, guys, I'm recording this late at night. So in 2009, there were 170 million users. And in 2020, there are 1.7 billion users on Facebook. And what he was postulating is how come the swine flu, which affected and well, I'm not going to go into all the numbers. You can look it up yourself, but affected 65 million Americans, and there was a fatality rate that I believe was a little larger than the common flu. How come the world didn't go into lockdown with that pandemic? And James's postulate is because there's so much fear being easily and readily spread by people on Facebook and Instagram and social media, and they have no clue what they're talking about. They're simply just going into fight or flight, which I understand doesn't mean you have to go into it, but they're going into all of this fear. So my question for you, I guess here's where I want to go on this podcast. And normally I know that I'm hopping around a little bit. Normally I know exactly what I want to do on a podcast. What I really want you to think about, I guess, in this episode, because I can't share with you what I wanted to, what I really want you to look at is how much fear are you going into? Now, on the flip side, I want to be very, very candid about this. I think that to keep yourself healthy I think it's important to do that. And I think the way we do that is to be cautious. I mean, use your good sense, use your common sense and to exercise caution. But to go into fear, let me ask you this. What reward, what reward do you get for going into fear and going into Chicken Little, the sky's falling and all this? And I ask you that question in that particular way. What reward do you get for going into fear? And many of you will say, well, I don't get any reward. No, you get some kind of reward. It's called a secondary gain, secondary benefit. You get some kind of reward for going into the fear and the extreme fear for many people. Hopefully not a lot of you listening to this podcast. But the question is, what do you get out of that? Seriously, if you sat down for a few minutes and you really thought through that and you ask yourself the question, what reward and what benefit, what do I get out of going into so much fear, which is also paralyzing a lot of people in the world? What do you really get out of that? Now, somewhere else I want to go is this, because I'm going to tell you where I am, is I'm being cautious. I wash my hands. I have, because what's interesting is I know that I used to travel a lot, and one of the dirtiest places in the world is on airplanes. As I read one time, a study, bacteria-wise, is on airplanes. So I used to have the habit of always taking like a little, a 2-ounce container or 3-ounce, whatever it is, of Purell in my carry-on. And I'd always wipe my hands before I'd eat and everything else. So I've got Purell all over the place, and I've got plenty of it. Now, what I was saying there about me, am I being cautious? Yes, absolutely. Am I quarantining myself? Yes, to the event that, or to the extent that I can, not the event, to the extent, meaning I get groceries. I do not hoard groceries. I get enough for the week, because if people would stop freaking hoarding the groceries, there'd be enough for all of us. I mean, the country's not running out of food. So I pretty much self-quarantine, but I go get groceries as I need. I go get pet food as I need, or medicate, which I don't need right now, but if I did it, I'd go to the pharmacy and get medication. But you know what I'm not, and I'm cautious, but what I'm not getting into is I'm not getting into the fear, the panic, the survival mode, or any of that. I'm just not getting into it, because this is what I know. You probably have heard me say before on this podcast is that everything, even if you think it's not true, I really don't care what you think, because this is true when you look at the bigger context of life. Everything always has been, it is now, and will always be fine. Even if you think it's not fine right now, it's going to be fine in time. You look all the way back to 2009 and 10. Guess what? The markets are crashing. Years later, I read some research. It takes about 2 years for the markets to recover, and everything is fine again. With what's happening to the stock market, everything is going to be fine. I've never in the 127 years of the stock market ever seen it crash and never seen it come back. And 127 years here in the United States. It will bounce back at some point. So you've heard me say before, as I just said, everything always has been, is now, and will be fine. And then I want to ask you this, and I know you've heard me say this, and People hear me say things a lot on the podcast, and I mean this respectfully because I've been there, but they don't get it. They think they get it, but they don't get it. And here's the phrase: you are where your attention is. So, where is your attention? Think about that. Where is your attention as all of this is going on? You look at people that are running around and the sky's falling. Well, where is their attention? You look at people that are saying things like, you know what? We can see the dolphins again in Italy because, in different parts. What's that city in Italy where it's got all the boats? And Venice. We can see dolphins now. We've got clean air in Beijing and parts of China because people aren't out and about. So what I'm sharing with you is this. People are going to have their attention in different places and on different things. What I want you to look at, I request, is where is the most powerful place that you can have your attention to give you the greatest peace of mind while all of this is happening. Because guess what? No matter what you think, you're going to be incorrect about this. No matter what happens, when I say incorrect, because some people are like, no, the world's coming to an end. This is what I know. In time, everything will heal. Now, I don't know that time, but in time, everything will heal and everything will get back to air quote normal. When is that going to be? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. But I do know that's going to happen. Also, I want to point out, I think I'd mentioned it a little bit last week because I don't go back and listen to the podcast once I do them. And when I was in the hospital, my brother-in-law called me and we were talking about the power of intention, intent. What is your intention? What is your intent while all of this is happening? My intention, because see, I did cover last week in the podcast that you're an energy being and you work at multiple layers and multiple levels of energy. And I shared with you what my brother-in-law shared with me is that the most abundant form of energy in the universe is the power of intention. Not attention, but intention. So a huge question, and let me slow down here for you and for all of us. What is your intention in regard and relative to your health and your experience as all of this is going on in the world? Seriously, guys, I know we're human beings. I know we listen to podcasts, we read things, and we fly right through it, and we're like, oh, I got it, and we go on about our days. I really request that you think about that. What is your intention as you are experiencing all of this? Now, today I had to go out because I needed some food. The house isn't empty, but there's some things that I needed for the week. Excuse me, I had the hiccups there. Now, I could have edited that out. No point. Sorry about that. But when I was out and I walked into Whole Foods, and I am in Sedona, Arizona, at my house here right now, and there's only 10,000 people that live in this town. It's a small town. And normally there's like 4 million visitors per year because it's a very powerful place. It's a very pretty place. There are like 4 million visitors per year to Sedona. Well, today it's pretty quiet out, and I went to Whole Foods. And as I walked in, there's not people hustling and bustling and people fighting for things or any of that. But my intention was, how can I respect, because a lot of people are getting into fear and they're respecting, and I think it's good caution. The 6-foot rule, keep 6 foot away from people. And there were people there with masks and gloves and everything else. And my intention was, how can I be at peace and stay at peace while I'm here and also help other people that I'm around or walk down the aisles or any of that? How can I also help them stay at peace and not be around them to not perturb their emotional state and their mental state of mind? So that's one of the questions I have for you is, what is your intention about your experience physically? What is your intention about your health? And what is your intention as all of this is happening right now? And I also want to point out here, and we'll wrap up this episode, but so many of these people getting into fear, and it's billions of people getting into fear, is people are getting into fear because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. What I want to point out is there has never been a time in your life that you know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? None of you, not one person listening knows what's going to happen tomorrow. My brother-in-law, being a shaman, he can see, and he's been very, very accurate over the years, all the years that I've known him. And he's told me before, he goes, I can see generally pretty well, but you know what? I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow because what I see is affected by human consciousness. And if things change with an individual and their consciousness, or things change in the collective, then that happens. What's gonna not that happens. That changes. That changes what's gonna happen tomorrow. So he goes, can I see 100% about what's gonna happen in the world? No, but I can generally see. So let me ask you, you individually, or every one of you listening, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And were you in fear before Corona because you didn't know what's going to happen tomorrow? No, you just had more what I call false certainty about what's going to happen tomorrow. For all you know, things could clear up in a week. I mean, that might not happen. I'm just sharing with you if Wuhan has had no reported outbreaks or cases in the last 3 or 4 days, then why can't that happen somewhere else, right? Anyway, I'm going to wrap up there, but I want to ask you that question is if you didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow a month ago, what really changed other than more uncertainty? And really what changed is your external environment. Remember, this podcast is about living your life from the inside out. What really changed is more uncertainty in your external world around you. And basically, that's from people running around. I mean, I'm going to just share with you here, and I'm just being candid, and people that really are in my coaching programs know I'm very direct. There was an idiot, and the guy's an idiot on Facebook that I'm connected to, and I deleted him. A couple of days ago, he said, everybody should liquidate everything you have. Well, that's sheer stupidity because that's the surest way to implode an economy, which is the last thing that anybody wants, is an implosion literally of an economy, which happened literally in 2009 when the banks stopped lending money, which stopped the flow of money, which stopped the cycle, which implodes an economy. But you know what happens is people like this who are idiots, and there are idiots in the world. I mean, I think I'm a very kind guy, but you know what? Every one of you know there are people out in the world that literally are just, anyway, that was an idiotic comment to tell people liquidate everything you have because what he's doing is fearing what can happen in the economy, not even recognizing that what he's saying is what implodes economies. One more thing here is there are people, somebody said yesterday, there's just not enough fear in the world about coronavirus. Big exhale, Jim, breathe. The thing is this, is fear actually speeds up your adrenal system. It affects your endocrine system, and it weakens you. Fear literally weakens your immune system. So if right now it's important that you have the strongest possible immune system that you can possibly have, can you see how counterproductive it is to get into fear, which weakens your greatest asset, which is your immune system? It makes absolutely no sense. Now, that being said, to validate what I'm sharing with you, go look at Facebook and look at all of the nonsensical, well, maybe, anyway, just imagine for a moment. Don't even go do it, but just imagine all the nonsensical stuff by people who have no clue what they're talking about, posting on Facebook and Instagram, trying to drag other people down into their fear. That is not a place that is healthy for you to be. So that's what I want to share with you. Just stay out of that and be very careful about where your attention is. Now, transformational takeaway I do every single episode is number one, you are where your attention is. And secondly, set your intention. Set your intention to be healthy while all of this is happening in the world around you. Set your intention that you continue to attract clients. Set your intention that when you need food or toilet paper or whatever it is, it's going to be there. Toilet paper might be a little bit harder, but set your intention that when you need it, it's going to be available for you. Now, I want to also apologize. I know that I went on multiple different tangents here because literally, as I said, what I wanted to do in this podcast, I decided not to. So those are your transformational takeaways, is you are where your attention is, and use your power of intention to set your intent for the experience you want, while a large portion of the rest of the world is running around like a chicken with their head cut off. Okay, I am in Sedona all week long. Now, I'm not going to actually guarantee this for the next podcast episode, which we're doing one a week right now. However, what it's looking like I will create for you guys is a self-hypnosis audio on how to have peace of mind in the chaos all around you. Right now, that's what I'm looking at doing. Will it happen 100%? No, I'm not guaranteeing it, but yet that's what I'm looking at for the next episode. So let's wrap this one up. And guys, I can't tell you enough. All of you, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. But seriously, think back to what I asked you about fear. What reward do you get? Actually, you get the reverse of that. You weaken yourself by getting into the fear. So let's be hyper vigilant about and be examples and be leadership to people around us. Cautious leadership about managing our attention and our intention. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on the next episode. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.